Hey everybody, John LeTourneau here, Director of Commercial Operations at eXp Commercial. We have an exciting story to tell you about today. We've got some amazing commercial advisors who specialize in a bit of a niche that most people aren't aware of and don't know as much about, but they've had an awesome transaction. We're going to share some details on it. So Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you to let you introduce the team and kind of give us some backstory on what it is you do here at eXp Commercial.
Yeah, well, I have been a part of Senior Care Realty since its beginning back in about 2000, and I've actually stepped away. So I'm really moved away from Senior Care Realty, but still real connected to the other two guys on the screen here, Darren Dudgeon, who is now the owner and the principal, the broker, the head guy at Senior Care Realty, and Bob Richards. We go back a long way doing senior living deals.
Awesome. Very, very cool. So, and I know you guys had a significant transaction happen. Tell us a little more about that.
Well, this was a portfolio of assisted living facilities and one independent living facility in central Wisconsin. It began probably in around 2015, 2016, just as part of other deals we'd been working on. And as so often, we work in a relatively confidential market, meaning the owners don't really want others to know their properties for sale. There's a lot of issues with staff and residents, and they don't want the public to know that there might be a change coming. So they bring us in because we know the market. And a lot of times as we do some of that confidential marketing, other sellers, other owners will come to us and say, tell me more about what you do, how you do that. And a conversation begins. Sometimes that conversation leads to a deal quickly. And sometimes, like this one, it might take 10 years. But eventually,
literally 10 years, 11 years,
we get the deals done. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's always a joke. I love when people go, I want to get into commercial. I'm new. I'm like, great. And they go, I want to do land. I'm like, well, I hope you can live in your parents' basement and eat ramen for a long time, because very often you work on deals long enough to say, I could have said, do you want fries with that, and may have made more money overall. But at the end of the day, you serve the clients and serve them well, regardless of the time. So tell us more about the transactions. What was the individual roles that you all had kind of working through this as as this deal progressed? Because clearly it's been a long journey.
Yeah, well, it was definitely a team approach, and Senior Care Realty is really blessed to have a great team that each person plays an important role. One of the roles that I played, and it might have been Darren and me together, or just myself initially going out and making that first client visit after the person had reached out to us and said they were interested in selling and just wanted to learn more, and just doing that front end. But a lot of what we do is go through the coaching process of helping a client understand the value of their property, for one thing, whether they're even ready for sale, which again, because this was a 10-year deal, they were not ready for sale. But because of the coaching we can kind of bring to them and show them what they need to do to get ready for sale, we continue that. And so Bob and others in part of the back office really help provide information and build a relationship with the client to help get them ready for the sale they want and the exit they look to. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's always interesting when I do see transactions come through like that. You kind of go, okay, one of two things. You see one set of people who bring property to the market who have had what I call the prep year, right? Which is crush expenses, raise rent, stabilize operations, and really make it attractive to the next round. The next investor is going to come in and see more value in it than any other. The others are sort of the I broke a hip seller, which is, hey, something happened. I broke a hip. I got to go. And you see such a massive disparity in net operating income, which ends up being a massive net difference in price. So how did you coach them to get there? What steps do you take? Because it's going to be different than necessarily like, flip all the apartments, paint them, and raise rent by $100. You guys have a very nuanced business. So what does it look like prepping a seller for sale in your guys' world?
Well, you alluded to it, John, you were right on. Helping sellers understand the metrics that are important to many buyers. And when you get to a deal of this size, many of the buyers are sophisticated investors, they're institutions even, and they look for certain metrics to make sure it's going to really enhance what they already have. And so a lot of the sellers we work with are individual owners. They might be mom and pop, even at a large scale, they're still a small family business. And they're not really keeping up with what's important in terms of metrics for the buyers out there. So we start educating them about that process, and then they start blending that into their operations. That includes things like, of course, occupancy rate, making sure that you're actually maximizing revenue. But in our world also, there's a large percentage of public pay and public support for the residents of these facilities. So how much is private, how much is public? That's something that they stay aware of. Of course, operating expenses. Are they really managing expenses to drive to the bottom line? Senior living is a unique part of the real estate world. It certainly is a great real estate investment. In fact, that as an asset class outperforms many other sectors right now. If you look at some of the literature out there in terms of rate of return, but that's driven in part because of the risk and the operational component to it all. So diving into those operations to really drive money to the bottom line to prep for a sale is key too. Lots of different factors.
Very cool. Very cool. And I did forget to introduce Darren as one of our AAC members. So Darren, thank you for serving on our AAC. Appreciate your service there as well. So I was remiss in that, but thank you for serving there and being a leader for our advisors. So Darren, what was your take on the deal? I mean, you clearly had lifted a little bit here and leaned in. Where was your role in this, and how do you see the deal coming together?
Yeah, I think like Mike was mentioning, the fact that it was probably a number of years ago that we originally went out and had an opportunity to speak with the seller. At the time, his expectations were quite a bit higher than how the property was performing. And I think some of what Mike has mentioned, that we helped coach him in that respect, helped him understand, really where the property should be, marketed at and where it will probably sell at. And I think that's one of the things that when I look at what we do, I feel as if we're as much an advisor as we are anything, where we're helping them, whether they have an attorney, they have an accountant. I mean, we're helping advise them on how do you sell this? How do you navigate this process? How do you maximize the value? And ultimately, we found out years ago that we couldn't get to the point that he wanted to be at. And so it kind of dissipated. It went away for a bit. And then at some point it came back. And this was actually after Mike had left Senior Care Realty and had started something that he, is still within the business. But the seller had continually, reached out to Mike and asked Mike for advice, and Mike helped him do the things that he needed to do within his operations to get to a point where it could support the sales price that he wanted. And that's ultimately where we got. And then the story kind of goes to Mike and Bob, where Bob was instrumental in working together with Mike to reach out to the various potential buyers, and quietly and confidentially, which is part of what we do, to identify a number of buyers and bring in multiple bids. That's always the key, obviously, so that an option of one isn't an option, right? And so,
well said.
So yeah, getting multiple bids on the table and creating an environment, it's necessarily a bidding environment, but we got, I think, to the highest price point we could get for them. So that's kind of where Bob starts to come into play in this story.
Cool. An interesting thing you hit on there is, if you notice, we are referred in EXP Commercial, we are commercial advisors. That's our title. Right. Everyone starts as an advisor because our role should be predominantly advisory, far more than transactional. And the only way I think you all kept this thing together that long it was having integrity, knowing the truth of the market, but also being truly an advisor and an advisory role and consultative. Because the one thing in commercial is really they're not going to go on a public portal and say, oh, brand XYZ portal says my house is worth $400,000.
Right.
That may be close. It may not be close. I mean, the CEO of one of those large portals sold his own home for 38% less than his own online estimate. So that one doesn't help. But overall, they can't do that commercially because clients don't have that same transparency into the market because there's so much quiet data, like you said, that confidential information and stuff's behind sort of transactional gates, that unless you have experts who are in the field actively transacting, even if you pull up a comp, understand that comps speak to markets we're no longer in.
Right.
A comp closed today. You've been working on that deal for years. Now, if someone said, hey, I want to put it on market, we're going to have a year of prep and close in a year and a half. Skating to where the puck is going to be is really a challenge.
Right.
It requires an incredible amount of experience there. So kudos on that.
Well, it's not uncommon for us to work with. We just listed an opportunity last week that we've been working with the seller for 2 years, and they originally came to us. They had 2 buildings. One he had just built. One was stabilized. The second building, I said, hey, if you want to maximize your value, you need to, get that thing stabilized, and you need to get your numbers in line, because there were certain costs that were out of line, and we helped identify those things, and we helped him get reporting in a position where we know what the buyers are going to want. We know what the lenders are going to want. And if you have these things in place, once we start marketing, it's just going to become much easier to generate bids when the information's there. And so again, advising them on how to maximize the value on this thing. And throughout the process, there's a lot of moving pieces. These buildings that in this particular space includes licensing. So, not only are you talking about the sale of operations and the sale of real estate, but you also have a business that's licensed, and there has to be a license change when there's a change of ownership. They have to have a new license and application and a whole process that is completely out of our hands. So we're helping them go through and working with attorneys oftentimes, and most of the time in the deals we're working on, not all, but the purchase agreements and all those types of things are put together by attorneys. And so we're kind of holding hands and help them, navigate through this process, which is not a typical, as you were pointing out, let's throw the house on the market and see if we can get a number for it.
Right. Well, one interesting thing in this, where I want to switch the conversation up a bit. You mentioned, you're setting things up, right? And what I say is truth is the ultimate defense against defamation. I didn't quote that, originated, of course, but when people go, how could you possibly want that number? Well, here's the backup. Here's the operating expense. Here's the rest of that to justify that number. Knowing where those landmines are ahead of time,
right,
closes that transactional cycle and shortens it at an 11-year deal, but shortens it. But at the same time, you're also then speaking truth to the market. And there's another little pickup in there, in that the seller said, I want X. You said the market's here. You didn't say, well, we'll take it and try it your way and see what happens. And, because that's just wasting everyone's time, the market's time. And it's proving the one thing you can't do is sell the property type that you brought to market unrealistically. Mm-hmm. So I love that your reputation's intact. You're like, here's where we're at. We'll get you there.
Right.
But guess what? This is the work you need to do. And you found a really good partner on the seller to do the work.
Right. And the thing about this particular stage is that once it was ready, once it was supporting the price that the seller wanted, the time frame was actually fairly short. From the time it was actually listed until the time that they had gotten offers, and honestly, till the time it closed was pretty quick in this particular type of deal. So
sure.
Once it was staged and once it was ready, it actually moved fairly quickly.
Fabulous. And then you talked about like confidentially bringing that to buyers and sort of the marketing side of it. What does that look like when, your buyers are going to try to poke holes in it? You guys have a pretty strong defensible net operating income and EBITDA numbers and things like that at that point, right? Wow. So when you're bringing it out to buyers, that's also a very one-on-one conversation for most of what you do, or do you blast it on LoopNet and see what happens? Mm-hmm.
No, it's all one-on-one. We walk everything out. And as we were just talking about, we've made sure we have built a case to support that price point. And all of our marketing is done confidentially. I would say majority of it is us walking it out to buyers. We've created a terrific network of buyers that we've cultivated over the years. And I think that's what helps set us apart from a traditional commercial broker, and it's not uncommon for commercial brokers to come across a listing like this that they get and have no idea, how to market it or who to market it to. And so oftentimes, in fact, we just helped a broker northern Wisconsin go under contract with a listing of his. So we've helped him identify a buyer. But that's a huge part of what we do, is help get to a point where we're supporting the price that they're ultimately looking for.
Awesome. And so, Rob, where do you interface with this? Rob, tell me your story there.
So, I've worked with Mike and Darren now for 16 years. And when this opportunity came around, Mike and Darren and I all got together and put together a buyer spreadsheet, essentially groups that we knew would be likely candidates. And that list comprised of about 25 to 30 different groups. And so then we just started working through that. As Darren mentioned, we kind of started walking it out to these groups on an individual basis. And from there, you'll get some feedback, right, where it's just not a fit for them. They want opportunities with more upside. They want different location. We can't change those things. But ultimately, it came down to about 4 or 5 different groups that were serious. And then I think we had 3 or 4 different offers that were presented to the seller. One of the requests from the seller was to get these groups on site. And the group that ultimately ended up acquiring the property came out like literally within a few days, which I think really helped. Funny enough, that the ultimate buyer, I don't even think was really looking for acquisitions at the time. But I was working with them on another project and let them know about this one, and their interest was piqued, and ultimately made a strong offer, of course, and got out on site. And we were fortunate enough to get that one to contract, which is only just the first part in these, right? I mean, getting a deal in contract is one thing, getting it to the finish line is a whole nother. And of course, with this type of deal, always going to be some pitfalls, always going to be some, oh my gosh, is this thing gonna stay on track? But we've been there, we've done that a lot. It actually took, I think one of the things that helped, we actually sat down in person. And so buyer and seller got to meet each other, which can work both ways.
Ooh, wow, that's the deal hand grenade right there. That's a tricky one. Okay, cool.
Yeah, but cool. I think it just helped everyone kind of get a little better understanding where everyone was coming from. And
sure.
Anyway, but
so a few things. No matter how much social media and AI and all that in our business, this is a belly to belly business at the end of the day, and you can never. You can Instagram your way to social fame, but in this business, you have to eventually sit across from someone, convey your value or the value of the asset you're representing, and make a transaction happen. And that you've done. If you notice, the one hallmark of all of your conversations have been human interaction, one-on-ones, hand-holding, and consultative stuff. The other thing that's interesting, and you brought up another nuance too, which is we don't get paid to list properties; we get paid to close properties. And think about how many times you've had to sell this asset. And by that, I mean, you bring it to the market, you go through the pool of highest and best buyers, then through their legal team, their due diligence, their operational team, the lender, if the lender's out there, the lender's appraisal. I mean, you're having to bring this to resell, if you will, this deal and make sure that it's palatable 4, 5, 6 times to get the transaction arc closed. And that's
we've always said that.
Yeah.
We've always said that. The listing is the first sale. That's been a theme we've talked about many times. And you got to keep making sales and never sit on your backside and wait for the deal to come to you. You got to go out and sell it to the next stage, whether that's the lender, the buyers, the others, the licensing folks, everybody that's involved. You got to stay active in the deal.
Absolutely. The other nice part is if you think about your platform, excuse me, and what you're doing is that you mentioned, hey, these are development guys and they're not really buy operations. And you went, oh, by the way, you had that, oh, by the way, because you knew very well who your database was, who your likely buyers were. And you built your brokerage business on probability over possibility, right? Is it possible my friend's cousin, uncle might buy this? Yeah, great. Do I want to build my business on that? Not sustainable. So you all knew very clearly who your funnel was, which is great. You can go, hey, here's 30 groups. We presented it. 10 said, send me more. 5 said, let's do it. And then you also brought up something really, really interesting, which is intent, right? And I listen carefully with my eyes, meaning I hear what you say, but I watch what you do. And when you presented it to, say, your 4 or 5 groups who were out there at the end, one of them's like, we're flying out there next week. Let's go. That to me, all day, great. As opposed to, well, send me the OM. Well, if it's a good deal, I'll call you back. I mean, there's that kind out there, which respect, fine, do your thing. But when they get that kind of intent, I love it. But also they knew that if you were bringing them a transaction, it wasn't a bogus 10 cap.
Mhm.
They knew based on the quality of your name, your group, and the experience you all have that you're throwing a real deal at them. You're putting them to bat because there's an actual opportunity there. And that also speaks to reputation on time. And you've talked about, you've worked together for a long time, and it's amazing what you're able to do as well from upper Wisconsin. I mean, let's be real. It's not like you're in LA or Chicago or New York and transactionally, the country is your playground here for some really cool stuff. So I love what you're doing. So looking at this transaction, you guys were blessed to get that closed after only 11 years. It sounds almost like the land development deals when you want to be the third or fourth buyer, because the first one figures out zoning doesn't work. The second one discovers the spotted owl. The third finds out the neighbor who hates the development. And the fourth one finally is like, aha, now we can do this. So I'm sure this was a journey for you, right? And it's awesome you do that. Kind of looking forward, what does your business look like? What are you seeing trend-wise in senior care and sort of in the next 5-10 years? And then how are you leveraging the EXP platform to accomplish your goals for a business? I'll just throw it out to whoever on that one. That's an open softball for you.
Yeah, well, I might start off with them. To me, I think the opportunity and big part of the reason why we took a look at EXP was I think we have a great platform. I think that we do a lot of great things for our clients and sellers, and oftentimes we've had to pass up opportunities throughout the United States. Possibly refer them off to different people or what have you. But, looking at EXP and EXP's platform it gave us the opportunity with the license portability program to look at being able to list properties in other states with the helps of managing brokers in other states, which we've done. We currently have 2 or 3 different listings that are outside of Wisconsin and Minnesota and Iowa, which is where we're licensed. And it just gives us the opportunity to go help and work with sellers that, and oftentimes we wouldn't have had the opportunity. The other thing and the other aspect is the recruiting aspect, because I think that there's a great opportunity for whether it be, agents that are on the residential side, agents that are on the commercial side, people that think that maybe there's an opportunity to focus on senior housing, which is an incredible space and one that you probably have one in your backyard and you don't even know. And when you really take a look at if we're able to identify what ended up being close to a $50 million listing in northern Wisconsin, I got to think there's a $50 million listing in your backyard. And right. So does it make sense to potentially take a look at this space and focus on this space? This is all we do. We don't lease buildings. We don't do development. We don't sell storage, or anything like that. We specialize in senior housing, and that's all we do. So I'm currently out looking for agents that would love to specialize in senior housing space and be the senior housing specialist in their backyard. That's what I see coming up for us.
Absolutely. I mean, with the demographic, the aging of the American population, this has to be something where the market's kind of coming to you and you're a strong player standing. Ready? I mean, am I reading this right?
It's huge. I know, Mike, you could probably, Mike is currently, from the standpoint, still has his hands in ownership of these types of properties, he and his family. So Mike can certainly talk to that point.
Yeah, Mike, please.
Yeah. This industry's changed. I mean, I got involved in 1988 with a small 8-unit assisted living home. It wasn't even called assisted living back then. This was new back then, but now it certainly has changed. It's become much more sophisticated, many more institutional players. The opportunity has expanded, not just demographically, which is obvious, but also with the number of players involved in this. It's created more competition for Senior Care Realty. Back in the day when we sold a group of assisted living facilities and I decided what was I going to do next, and I went into doing this, helping other people go through sales. There was no competition. It was pretty easy. In fact, I got so busy that I had to hire Darren, and back then we met on a golf cart one day and had this conversation. Really? And here we are now. But there's a lot of competition out there today. Mm-hmm. So having the right tools, the right resources, being able to reach out beyond your local market too is just important for the clients and sellers we have. So that's what I'm excited about, seeing the opportunity in the market, but then having the right tools like through EXP to be able to take advantage of that opportunity that's out there. It's really exciting. I've told Darren I was on my way out into retirement as I told him about the EXP opportunity. And I said, dang, I wish I would have known about this a while ago. I might still be just as active as I once was. And I still, as you can maybe tell, love it just a little bit. So we stay in touch and we still do some deals, but the opportunity in front of these guys is enormous.
Yeah, I agree. And the interesting thing is, you talk about interstate transactions, and you mentioned you're in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa.
In Iowa, that's predominantly where I would say we focus, and traditionally where we've had our listings.
Mm-hmm. And one interesting thing about that is, very early on, as a guy who was formerly at a very large national brokerage whose initials resemble little hard shell candies with cute mascots with white gloves on. Day one as a newbie, they go, here's a phone book, back when such things existed. Start at Aardvark, tell me when you get to Zebra, just cold call the world. And by the way, you only do office industrial. You only go from 88 down to 55 corridor out to 80. Like, that's your box. I'll call everyone in that world, which I applaud that. You get really good at getting over call rejection. But also it keeps you in a very tight lane to where if you think your clients only invest in that bucket, in that box, in that way, you're missing all the opportunity. Now, it kept me captive as a broker, but it certainly didn't let me serve my clients wherever they went. That's one of the advantages. We've worked really hard this last year and a half on EXP Commercial's referral platform and our interstate co-brokerage, and building out that national platform, because your clients in Wisconsin go, hey, I sold a $50 million asset. I'm going to Texas or Florida, wherever. You have the ability to serve that need there, which I think is powerful. And I love that you guys are leveraging that. So,
well, absolutely. In fact, we often talk about the buyer criteria is, if it fits in their box, they don't. One of the criteria is not necessarily oftentimes where. It's, can you find all these other pieces that check this box? And they like to make sure it's in a good market, but at the same time, if it fits within it checks most of their boxes, they don't really care where it's at. So that helps us, it helps us identify. There's tons of opportunities out there. You mentioned what's going on in the market, senior housing, the silver tsunami, the demographic that's coming is just starting to hit land this year. 2026 is the first year that majority of the baby boom generation, or the beginning of the baby boom generation, starts to turn 80. And that's kind of where the sites are for senior housing, where seniors start to consider going into senior housing. So over the next 15 years, you have about 75 million people pushing through that demographic. And one of the groups that has the most wealth, I think they have half the wealth of the United States.
Yeah, I've seen that stat. Yeah.
That demographic. So it's an interesting demographic coming through. And the other aspect that's kind of interesting is, if that many people that are coming through that potentially need senior housing at some point, what do they do with their homes?
What happens to what they're leaving behind? Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I think y'all creating ripple effect problems there.
Yep.
So the other question on that, you talk about the silver tsunami, and I've heard a lot about that, moving through. When you look at an interesting stat you mentioned, though, at 80 is when they're starting to look at this kind of care. My guess is, way back when, you probably looked at this care when you were 70 or 72. Like the extended lifespan of American population, I think, is also making this a big thing. Besides just the demographics, people are living longer, so they need care like this for a longer period. Are you guys seeing longer stays on average and longer predicted income per patient over time?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that. We still own facilities and operate some facilities, and the average length of stay has gone up. The average age of a resident has gone up. But there's other dynamics going on. And this feeds into what's happening even in the brokerage of these types of properties. New residents are demanding more amenities, more space, different changes. And so some of the older properties are becoming somewhat obsolete or need to be repurposed or refurbished. And that's creating some transaction volume for Senior Care Realty also, as owners either aren't willing or just incapable of keeping their properties out there in the competitive forefront. And so, yeah, the market is changing. It's a dynamic market. One of the big changes really is the introduction more and more of more institutional and larger businesses involved in this. It still is a highly fragmented mom and pop. And I say mom and pop, it sounds real small business. We're talking family business, though. It's just, I mean, I'm an example of that. We were a family business that built a bunch of facilities. We're no longer in this business. We exited. There's many, many out there like us that the keeping up has become quite a challenge. So that the market in terms of properties and the type of owner is changing right along with this tsunami of residents and customers too.
And so, Rob, over to you. So you presented this $50 million portfolio to your group of buyers. You kind of went down your list. You obviously have that list for the value adds, the stabilized institution.
Mm-hmm.
How have you seen that your buyer profiles change in this time? Are you seeing more institutional money coming in? Are you seeing more private, more foreign capital? Like, what does it look like for the people who are buying? What's that profile look like for you?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it's all sorts, really. And a lot of that is more deal dependent, right? Okay. If you have 80 plus units under one roof, to Darren's point earlier, most buyers probably won't care where they're located within reason, right? They might not want a real small market, but if you check a lot of those boxes, they're in. But yeah, I've worked with groups that are just literally trying to get started in this business, whether they're maybe a nurse or just as an investor that they want to get in. And a lot of times those are going to be your smaller deals. Your mid-sized deals will be from, heck, we just did one with a large REIT that isn't really a real large. I mean, both were under 50 units. So we work with all types of investors. I would say just individuals that are just looking to get in and grow. And that's fun too. We helped one that just started about 10 years ago. We helped them acquire their first few properties. And then we just recently helped them sell their last 5 of those. So kind of cool to see that too, from start to finish. But
Awesome. Yeah. Very interesting. Okay, cool. As we kind of wind down our time together, it's been awesome, seeing what you're able to accomplish, leveraging the XP commercial platform, going there. What's your takeaway, like the next 2 to 3 years? What do you see as the main drivers besides silver tsunami? I get that. Let's talk about for a minute, if you would also, and I forgot this one, sorry, AI. Has AI affected your practice or people underwriting your assets or what people are looking for in properties in any way, shape, or form? I know it's affected us in so many ways we don't even realize yet, but do you see some changes happening to bigger data and bigger computing skills put into and around your industry?
Mike, you want to take that? Bob,
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe it's a little different approach, but yeah, I just brought my son on board and starting to get into this business with us. And even on this deal, right? This one we're talking about today, he really helped me a lot because there was a point where I needed to, I thought, rewrite a whole letter of intent as the buyer was ready to go another direction. And I'm like, well, I'm going to write it up anyway. And I figured it would take me 3-4 hours to do that. And he's like, well, no, just do this. And we put it into AI and it took me 10 minutes. Right. Things like that can definitely help as far as, and John, you mentioned it earlier, right? I mean, it's still that human interaction and some of these discussions that are going to be still critical. Yes, I think it can help with some efficiencies, but I don't see it. And maybe it's I don't want it to take over.
As we all get closer to needing the facilities we discuss as a group, yes, I understand that. Okay.
I've been playing with it a lot, actually. And I say playing with it because I'm exploring and wondering how we can implement it more. And I'm finding it a useful tool for some market research. I've got some recurring tasks that will just send me the latest senior living deals so I can kind of keep up with the market. Even in this deal, there was some of the offering memo we used. I wanted some just some help, just some new ideas, and that's been good. One of the agents that I work with and coach a little bit, he's a younger guy again, and the idea of valuations, it's amazing what is possible. So I would want to say I'm exploring it because I love to geek out on the new tools and see how we can become even more efficient. So not a lot right now, but I see a lot of potential.
Agreed. Very cool.
I was just going to point out something that Bob mentioned. His son joining us. He had just graduated from Clemson about a year ago.
Yeah.
I know, John, you have a pretty good focus on groups, and Senior Care Realty is a group within EXP and commercial group. And we helped Jake come on board. Again, he's with his dad, but we are helping him mentor him along. Giving him an opportunity to get involved immediately in deals and see the inside workings of how this comes together. How do we get the listing? How do we put together marketing? How do we get offers? How do we get it closed? How do we go through that process, which I think is really difficult if you're just getting into the commercial world to get that kind of insight. And I really think the group thing that is available through XP is something that some young, even whether it be younger or people that just want to focus on a specific area. So yeah, Jake is going to have a phenomenal year for his first year. I think he'll be involved in, I don't know, probably 10 to 12 deals in senior housing throughout this year, and get a real, good feel for, hey, how does this work, and get off and running without stumbling. So just a little mentioning of that group aspect. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you for that. And it's impressive. He gets his hands on 12 deals in his first year. The joke I was going to say is that's 13 more than most people touch their first year in real estate, right? As we've all learned. But the other part that's great about that, and what you're referencing there, Darren, is what we call our advisor development pathway, which is if someone does join EXP Commercial, you want to be part of a group, one of our authorized groups. If you do join them, your first 90 days, we take your cloud brokerage fee and cut that in half. So it makes it much more affordable. And then we align you with groups who are either in the states you want to be in or doing the product type or specialty you want, make that introduction. Then you're welcome to pick whatever group it is you want to pair up with, whatever group you like and whatever group likes you, because it has to be a two-way relationship, of course. But that ADP has been great. We've got dozens and dozens of people going into that and through that process right now. And it's been wonderful because that path forward, especially starting out of the gate, is so critical to have that guidance, that mentorship, that, okay, what do I do now? You have that answer. So I appreciate you leaning into the platform and taking advantage of that. That's wonderful. And congrats on your son as well. That's cool. That's very cool. Cool. Well, as we wind up again, sorry, I said we were winding up 5 minutes ago, but being an Irish guy, we say goodbye 6 times. What do you do? So any last thoughts or any last sentiments you'd like to share on this? And again, congrats on an awesome transaction, but we'd love to give you guys one last opportunity to kind of share whether a nugget of wisdom or a bit of broad-based advice, some golf zen, because I think you all met on a golf cart, which is awesome. That's one of the cool founding stories. I love that you have a backstory. Any last thoughts for us as a group here?
Yeah, if I could just throw one out, it is, it's not typical to have a deal take 10 years. And I wouldn't want every deal to take 10 years. This is not the norm. So when we talk about that, I wouldn't want anybody to think that that's how it's done, because we've actually taken a listing and closed it in 7 days. That was our record for the quickest deal too.
Nice.
But the idea that, and Bob and Darren both brought this up too, is the importance of relationships, not just with buyers and sellers, but people within your industry, people within your referral network and base, and the long-term credibility. We talked about the credibility of buyers, credibility of your own firm, the credibility of relationships, and how you maintain those over the years will lead to the next deal and the next deal and the next deal. Never, ever, ever get into this for the short term. Get into it for the long term. If you're into it for the short term, just go find something else to do. Yeah, so that's what I think this deal is representative of, and an important thing at Senior Care Realty, I'm sure, still today.
Love it. That's awesome. And the key is you have to be patient enough for the tree to grow and the fruit to come off. Otherwise, you're just building someone else's orchard at that point. You're going to get in a year or two, flail around, meet everybody, get people close, and not stick around long enough to transact. All you've done is build someone else's database and someone else's orchard. So yeah, that's well said. Well said. Rob, anything on your side?
No, I mean, I was just happy that, with the relationship with Mike, to work together on this one. Even though Mike's not involved day to day with Senior Care Realty, we still connect quite often, get together when we can. but still bounced ideas off of him for sure. And so just happy to maintain this relationship and keep it going. And it's been really fun to get this one through. And I just ran into the buyer over the weekend, and he was thrilled as well. So it's
awesome.
good.
Yeah, at the end of the day, that's wonderful. Yeah. You talk about reputation and your name. I heard early on, for the first 5-10 years, you earn your name. After that, your name should earn for you. And if it's not, you're not really doing something right. So it's great to see that come back. Darren, what have you got for us? Take us home. Something.
Yeah, I just to add on to what Mike had mentioned. One of the first things that he brought me to when I was considering joining his group at the time, back in 2004, was I went to the Wisconsin Assisted Living Association event. At the time, Mike was the president of Wisconsin Assisted Living, and I think that speaks volumes to the fact that you got to get involved and be part of the groups that are out there. Bob is actually, we're playing in the golf event for Wisconsin Assisted Living in a couple of weeks. Bob is the chairman of the committee. Of course, Bob played golf at Iowa, so that he's qualified to hold that role. And but yeah, we really like to get involved. And there's other things within Wisconsin Healthcare Association. There's national affiliation that you could become involved in. And we definitely attend a conference that's out there that goes on annually, that has every buyer, seller, lender that you could imagine. It gives us an opportunity to actually, as you were talking about before, John, shake hands, with the folks that we work with as buyers. So I just highly recommend, and a lot of the higher producers out there already know this, but as you're trying to get going in a certain space or industry or whatever it may be, get yourself involved.
Yep, yeah. Absolutely. Lean into the industry, give back. And having done a lot of volunteer leadership for 15 years in this industry, every hour I ever gave, I got back 10 and 20 fold on that. Not necessarily just financially, but in terms of connections, network, experience, wisdom that might have cost me a transaction otherwise. And, and might have not let me serve my clients at such a high level. So great wisdom there. Gentlemen, thank you all for your time today. Appreciate you being part of the XP Commercial and having an amazing, amazing group. If anyone wants to reach out to you, they can find all of y'all around Hub. So please reach out if you're interested in senior care or senior care living. It seems like it's going to be kind of a cool place for the next few years or so. Sort of maybe what multifamily was 5, 6, 7 years ago before it got overhyped. But Google or AI Silver Tsunami, and then reach out to Darren, Mike, and Bob and see what we can do to connect you guys up. So thanks again. Congrats on an amazing closing, and have a great day, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.